Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another round of rapid fire racing action in the SimRacing International GT3 Championship from the UK SimRacing community, Season 16 of course of the wonderful UKSR series, and we are here today on the iRacing Simulator platform for what is round number 8 of the championship. Indeed, the rounds are running out. Round 8 of 10 has seen the drivers make the way all the way to Japan, and with it they're taking on the Suzuka International Racing Course, a circuit which definitely has withstood the test of time when it comes to the old age of classic circuits. At 3.6 miles in length and consisting of the best part of none other than an absolutely iconic set of 17 corners, this figure of 8 layout circuit, originally designed by John Hugenholtz, is a circuit that is absolutely loved, whether it be on 4 wheels or 2. At its core, of course, is an absolute wonderful blend of corner sequences from fast shifting S's from turns 1 through to 7, all the way through to the hairpin at turn number 11 or Kobayashi corner, and of course the wonderful spoon curve at turn number 13, which is all about off-camber left-handers before the long back straight and the absolutely terrifying 130R. For our drivers here today, it's going to be about trying to find a balancing act between being the quickest over a single lap and also the most consistent over the course of our entire race, because the one thing about Suzuka is it's an incredibly hard circuit on both driver and machine, and tyre wear here is going to be maximal. But of course, that's before you consider what you can see in the background. Normally on a dry day we'd have those factors, but when it's a wet day, and a very wet one as we can see right now, indeed being in the winter season going into Japan, anything is possible with regards to the weather, and we're seeing here a full deluge on display, while a very wet Suzuka circuit makes an even tougher test, and this is definitely going to be a question of who is the rainmaster of our GT3 class racing drivers. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you to this post-round broadcast live from circuit side for your viewing pleasure. Indeed, you're tuning in right now on the one and only source of this broadcast, and that's on YouTube at youtube.com. Search for SimRacing International, alternative SRI, and you can be tuning in there, enjoying the likes of many a rank and file who tune in, week out. And don't be shy, feel free to say hi and let us know how you're doing tonight as we get set for another brilliant round of racing. As for our schedule, well, of course, this is a post-round broadcast, so we are bringing it to you as if it were live, but the racing actually occurred earlier this month, and that was back on none other than Sunday the 16th of November 2025, but today of course is Wednesday the 19th of November, and therefore it's as close as possible to the raw live viewing experience for you guys and girls tuning in at home. And as always, we ask no spoilers please in the YouTube chat. But alas, that schedule, before I get distracted again, our schedule of course for tonight, times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Corner Time UTC, is our 60-minute race with the lone qualifying session currently getting underway in the background, and we're expecting that race to get underway at just after 10:07 this evening. And what a race it could be, given the fact that all 4 of our championships right now are absolutely on a tenterhook knife edge when it comes to who could be the championship leader heading into our final 2 rounds. In the quarantine booth you have myself, my name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX1 or Britain as Bit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be bringing you all your racing action over the entirety of the season. But let's talk a little bit more about the season and how we're headed into this round. As we can see, last time out in round number 7, it was the Autodromo Jose Carlos Pache in Brazil that welcomed our drivers on the 9th of November, and what a set of stories it was there, with Joe Nathan in the elite class returning to winning ways overall and in class, despite an incredibly close run between himself and rival Richard Simnor. With Simnor taking the previous 2 wins, it was Nathan's opportunity to strike back, and he needed to do so, and he's brought the gap now to Simnor back down to 10 points, as you'll see shortly. Meanwhile in the pro class, it was a challenging round for Mikey Story, but meanwhile it was his teammate from Dexterous Motorsports of Matt Hoyland who surprised everybody with a maiden victory of the season. But could there be even more surprises today, because many a driver in the class, such as Christian Maltrek and also none other than the likes of what was there Nathan Anstis, all having ups and downs over the course of the entirety of 60 minutes of racing. As the Premier class, we got to see what was an absolutely brilliant run of racing, where the fact that Samuel Clark in the end, the championship leader, was not able to score big. However, Ricardo Luis Pereira was able to score massively with his 2nd win of the season, and he absolutely dominated proceedings, and indeed the Interlagos circuit has now been renamed in honour of Ricardo Luis Pereira as the Autodromo Ricardo Luis Pereira, and that goes to show, at least in the community I should say, just how impressive his drive was, and indeed even surprising the pros if not the elites. Meanwhile in the Evo class, well, Edward Berry, he's returned to the top after a brilliant drive to finish on the podium. However, all eyes are going to be on Jordan Lee Jones, who took to the top step for the first time this season, and it means the Evo competition is only getting tighter. And with 2 rounds after today at Mount Panorama Circuit and Watkins Glen International, anything is possible before we reach the final finish line. But as for the point standings then coming into this round, starting off with the elites, And what we can see in the Elite Drivers' Championship, the top 12 is thus. Richard Simnor for DCW Racing still leads by 10 points then over Rage Against the Game Esports' Joe Nathan, with both drivers right now continuing to switch back and forth between wins and podium finishes. However, it's the consistency of Simnor that has proven to be the delta thus far. Casper Brotner, he sits in third right now and is really chasing down the third place spot in the championship, having not picked up a podium since what was round number 5, but could he be back there today for old dudes in cars? If not, Ryan Davies will be very likely to be hot on his heels at Empire Motorsport, head of Javi Sierra, who once again picked up a 7th place. The privateer then gives way to fellow privateer Ashley Coupland, who was on the podium, and a brilliant drive to the podium there from the Ford Mustang driver, head of Andy Jones, who we haven't seen on the grid since round number 3 for DCW Racing, and then it's Helder Gonzalez of Tractix Racing, Venari Racing's Philip Schwerker, and Connor Bros Sean Connor, who complete your elite top 10, with Connor there bringing home another 5th place and looking to try and move forward tonight. Ulrich Scholl and Raz Harper for Venari Racing and DDK Racing Team round off the top 12 of the elite standings. And meanwhile, when we come to the pro class, well, here the complexion is similar in some respects. Mikey Story is a championship leader, no doubt about it, by 64 points, but that advantage is gradually being cut away, and the Dexterous Motorsports driver with that 9th place finish with a lot of trouble finding in Brazil has definitely seen a massive torpedo taken to his championship advantage. The one thing he does have on his side is the fact we do have 2 drop scores over the course of this season, so therefore Story right now will know that 8th and 9th, the 8th place from the race opener, meanwhile that 9th place from last time out, well, he'll be thinking to himself that he can't afford any more major drops, and right now those 4 wins in the second are definitely at the core of his championship charge. Christian Maltrek, or should we say Mr. Second Place from America MA70 Esports, because he's on a run of 3 second places, but can he make it a win today? If not, Krista Houseaway is right there with him, only 4 points behind for Tractix Racing. Darren Sharples, he then sits in 4th place on 368 points. Old Dudes in Cars Blue, at a UK Sim Racing Price's site Anthony, who's only 8 behind. And it's Nathan Anstis for UK Sim Racing Mansell, who once again fell just slightly short of the podium last time out. When will his first podium come this season? It's likely, but when exactly, we do not know. It was a non-finish for Christian Furs of Panda Spec Motorsports, who falls to 7th, but is only at 12 points behind. And then Jack Barker once again had misery at Interlagos, and indeed that 6th place just not playing out the way he wanted it to, albeit some would say he had a better day compared to most that he's had this season, but he definitely wanted to be inside that top 5. But the made-for-racing driver in the end, after the bumps and scrapes of the open lap, got his head down and got him with the job, and indeed a resilient 6th place at that. 36 points behind him is Stephen Donnelly for JST Motorsports, and then Nathan Scott completes your top 10 in the pro class for Empire Motorsport. Head of Dexterous Motorsports Matt Hoyland, your race winner from last time out, and Peter Cox, who wasn't on the grid for Slow and Steady Racing. In the Premier class, meanwhile, well, the story here of Premier is one that's tightening, with Samuel Clark 3 third places, 2 second places, and 2 wins for Dexterous Motorsports. In any other championship season, that would be enough to be the clear favourite. It's not here, however, because Hendrik Zilka for Old Dudes in Cars Blue, after another second place finish last time out, is closing the distance little by little, but it is Ricardo Luis Pereira from Portugal for SRI Privateers of the Caribbean, who's proving impressive, and the fact that he's now picked up a second win, and well, you can imagine if he picks up another today, he could be right in between the 2 leaders as he comes out of this round. Alan Lever, meanwhile, for UK Sim Racing Mansell, he's 74 points behind, and that 4th place last time out, going in good stead, and he is starting to pull away from the rest of the field, with Joe Sparrow in 5th for JST Motorsports after another misfortunate round, but ahead of Austin Graff there, who is at 46 points behind. From the Axis Simsport driver, it's then the privateer of Luke Sherlock, who wasn't quite caught up in an open lap incident last time out at Interlagos, for which we're very happy to see. He's ahead of Rob Windsor by only now 16 points, with the UK Sim Racing Hill driver in turn ahead of 9th place driver Daniel Pace for Old Dudes in Cars. Then we do have Richard Jones round off the top 10 for Slow and Steady Racing, ahead of John Watt for SRI 7 privateer Ryan, and James Connolly, who rounds out the top 12 for UK Sim Racing Hill. Lastly, coming to the Evo class, and here we can see just how close it's getting. While top 2 separated by 8 points, with a swing of 8 points there in the favour of Edward Berry as a result of his 2nd place versus Simon Hartley's 3rd place. With the UK Sim Racing Hill driver right now definitely not the favourite, and Simon Hartley matching him step by step for DWO with SimCoach setups. It's Hartley's teammate, meanwhile, who took his first win of the season last time out and moves to 3rd on 432 points, only, I should stress, ahead of Richard White, who sits in 4th, based on result countback with that win, with the UK Sim Racing Mansell driver holding on to 4th place by only 2 points of Joel Loudon for SRI 7 privateer Ryan, who switched to the Ford Mustang so far, has not proven profitable. Thomas Westner as well, non-finished last time out, followed by that 7th place in round number 6. The privateer will be wondering why the wins can't come his way, and indeed it has been a very up and down season. He is a sine wave in his performances, but he's ahead of Joseph Preston for JST Motorsports by what is none other than 36 6 points, with Daryl Giacovelli in 8th ahead of Max Galgay for Splitsat Esports. And we do have Darian Giacovelli round off the top 10, with Paul Maffey for Phoenix Racing and Carl Tivoli completing the top 12 of the Evo standings. As for our teams, well, here we can see leading now into this round is Dexterous Motorsports with an advantage of the best part there of what is 260 points. It's not enough to wrap up the championship today, but if they score big and UKSimRacing Mansell or Old Dudes in Cars Blue cannot match their performance, it could be over next round at Mount Panorama. So therefore the fight is on to chase them down, but also look at that fight for second. It is only 58 points between UKSimRacing Mansell, Old Dudes in Cars Blue and DWR with SimCoach setups. Now on 834 points is UKSimRacing Hill, and they're only holding on to 5th place by 20 points over DCW Racing, with JSD Motorsports there then forming the next pack, which runs from 7th all the way through to 9th, with JSD Motorsports, Old Dudes in Cars and Tractix Racing separated by 52 points. And it's SRI Sam Privateer Ryan that round out your top 10 of the team's championship standings on 606 points, but they've got plenty of teams close behind them wanting a chance to move into that top 10. So the picture brought up to date then with regards to the standings coming into this round, let's talk a little bit about our host circuit for today. Because it is of course the Grand Prix layout of the Suzuka International Racing Course, located within the limits of the city from which it takes its name in the Mie Prefecture of Japan. 17 iconic corners and a huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just for their brilliant simulator, but also the absolutely superb track maps that come with it. And well, this circuit map definitely brings to life that figure of 8 layout, and with it, the absolute complexity of this circuit. There is no aspect to a driver's ability that is left untouched over this 3.6 mile course length. Indeed, the home to many a championship crown, perhaps none more notable than Damon Hill's Formula 1 championship crown in 1996. But as our drivers get themselves set today, they'll be hoping that the sweeps, turns, heavy braking zones and straights of this circuit could definitely be a stepping stone towards their final championship goal. But as we get ready to go racing, a quick reminder of the rules, because we're not allowed to go race without them. This is an open setup series with fuel loads restricted to 60% for all races. Qualifying wise, we have seen an extended qualifying format for tonight of 15 minutes, but still 4 flying laps available, and it is a closed qualifying format, and that's to respect the fact that lap times are longer due to the wet conditions, extending beyond approximately 2 minutes and 10 seconds, with the race meanwhile commencing via a double file rolling start, as is a tradition of the UKSimRacing GT3 Championship, there being 1 mandatory pit stop for fuel. Changing tyres entirely optional, but can you imagine if the circuit was to dry? I don't think it will, to be fair. That could be a big gambit, with each dry hand 1 fast repair available, and they may also have to come into the pit lane if they accumulate 20 or more instant points. Meanwhile, all race shooting shall be conducted post-race. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we make our way back to circuit side, and as we do, we are not too far away from completing this qualifying session. But how are they all looking at the moment? And well, right now, if it is to be believed, it could be Ricardo Luis Pereira, who might be on pole position here provisionally with a 2:14.724. And well, the man who absolutely led the way in the Premier class last time out at Interlagos, he was untouchable in the class. Could he be untouchable here today in another sense of grandeur? And that would be, of course, putting himself on overall pole. We've yet to see anybody other than an elite driver take overall pole position for every round so far this season. But in changeable conditions, this might be the opportunity for the SRI Privateers of the Caribbean driver, as meanwhile, we've only got a couple of other drivers out there on their final qualifying laps, including none other than Joel Loudon here, as he heads on through. But his qualifying session will end, ladies and gentlemen, and let's head to the grid, because 15 minutes is up. It's time to line up then for round number 8 of the championship. So as the drivers make the way onto the grid, this is how they line up for 8th run of the season. And as we can see, it is none other than Ricardo Luis Pereira who is confirmed to take the first non-elite overall pole position of the season for SRI Privateers of the Caribbean. And what an effort there from the Premier driver. And indeed, right now, he is coming on strong late on in the season. Could this be a sign of a huge momentum shift in Premier? We will wait and see. Alongside him on the front row, taking a maiden elite pole position, it is none other than Raz Harper for DDK Racing Team, and he'll be very pleased with that. He was ahead of Richard Simnor by 3 tenths. So the DCW Racing driver there, just pipping Sean Connor to 3rd place, with then there being 4 tenths between the two, and the Connor Bros, meanwhile, driver being followed up by Joe Nathan for Rage Against the Game Esports, who starts on your 3rd row. In 6th, meanwhile, well, that's a surprise, we do have Thomas Weston, your Evo pole sitter there. Well done to him. He's definitely acclimatised to these wet conditions. He's ahead of your pro pole sitter, Darren Sharp, who's for Old Dudes in Cars Blue, and then we do have your 2nd Premier driver of Samuel Clark starting in 8th for Dexterous Motorsports. Completing your top 10, it's going to be Mark Collicott, and alongside him for DCW Racing and Tractix Racing, it is going to be Krista Halsoy, who rounds off your top 10. And from the Norwegian driver, then we make our way to the 6th row of the grid. And it is Mikey Story there, who begins his day in the length for Dexterous Motorsports ahead of Wayne Douglas. From the privateer, it's then to Ashley Coupland for Relentless Racing. And we also have Richard White there, second of your Evo drivers, starting in 14th for UKSimRacing Mansell. On row 8, it's the premier pair of Daniel Payne for Old Dudes and Cars and Joe Sparrow for JSD Motorsports, with row number 9 going to another premier pair of Alan Lever for UKSimRacing Mansell and Richard Jones. Your top 20 is completed by Nathan Anstis and Christian Maltrek. And behind the UKSimRacing Mansell and Miracle MA70 esports drivers, you have on row number 11 the partnership of what is firstly Jordan Jones, the third of your Evo drivers on this grid today for DWR SimCoach Setups, and James Connolly for UKSimRacing Hill. Edward Berry begins this one in 23rd place behind his teammate and ahead of fellow team driver of Rob Windsor, with row number 13 in 25th place going firstly to Alex Brown for Slow and Steady Racing, and then you've got Ross Young alongside. Luke Sherlock starts 27th the privateer ahead of Shane Connor, with the Connor Bros driver in his Mercedes, then giving way to Robin Pownier in the Corvette Z06 GT3R, and we have Jack Barker round off your top 30 behind the SimCoach driver for Made for Racing. Then on row number 16, it's Hendrik Zilko who starts 31st for Old Dudes in Cars Blue ahead of Yavi Sierra, where the elite driver once again struggled in the qualifying, but he'll move forward in the race. And we then do have an all-Evo row, your penultimate row of the grid, 33rd. It is none other than Simon Hartley for DWR SimCoach Setups and Joel Loudon for SRI 7 Privateer Ryan. And on the final row of the grid, after his heroics in Brazil, Matt Hoyland there starts 35th for Dexterous Motorsports, head of Stephen Donnelly for JSD Motorsports. Neither driver set in a lap, and well, a frustrating qualified session, but here we go, ladies and gentlemen. It is all going to come down to wet weather here at Suzuka and some very tricky conditions to conquer. But for our drivers, of course, the mentality is going to be thus: keep it clean, keep it straightforward, keep it off the grass and out the barrier. But who exactly will be the best at doing so? For Ricardo Luis Pereira, this could be an opportunity to make history and to take what has not been an overall win for a non-top class driver in a very long time in the UKSimRacing GT3 Championship. But will it be spoiled? Will Raz Harper take his first win of the season? It's time for us to go racing and find out. And as they make their way out the final quarter, building up the speed little by little, but still some time. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen, as 60 minutes gets underway here in a very wet and challenging Suzuka circuit. And as they roar the way down, Luis Pereira then nails the start with Raz Harper tucking in behind. All the field now trying to understand where the spray is. The car off the road immediately. There are two cars off the road. And goodness me, that's gone very well for Daniel Payne and Ashley Coupland. But meanwhile, most other drivers have been able to survive all the madness in towards turn number 1. Well, to get a replay of that, there's going to be several replays here today, I'm certain of it. And as they make the way around, well, everyone right now just trying to tiptoe their way up to temperature. In fact, they've not had that much time to get any heat into these wet tyres. Meanwhile, Alan Lever here already up a blaze in Premier, as is Richard Jones behind and Joe Sparrow in front. And I would imagine that's where they've all gained off the misfortune of Daniel Payes. But as Payes has had to tow to the bits, as has Ashley Coupland. We'll get a replay of that when we can. Well, for the most part, it has been a relatively safe opening 7 quarters. And as all drivers now make the way towards Degda 1, well, Samuel Clark here getting his elbows out versus Chris Halsoy. Halsoy's not backing off here. 2 wide into Degda 1 in the dry is challenging enough. In the wet, that's even more tricky. But in the end, they're able to negotiate each other. But right now, Samuel Clark is absolutely chomping away at the back of that Aston Martin of Halsoy as he roars his way up into Kobayashi corner. Onto the brakes they go, and in the end it's going to be pressure. Wade Douglas looks up the inside. It's a bold move for the DC Motorsport Mercedes. And well, Clark gives all the space and plenty more real estate to it. And Mikey Story, meanwhile, running out nice and wide there to get the power down in the BMW M4 that seems to be struggling for traction. Chris Halsoy all over the back of here as they now make the way onwards towards Spoon Curve. Onto the brakes, they get ready to go, and as they head on in, well, no move there for the Halsoy versus Story. Wade Douglas, meanwhile, confirms he's taken that place as second in Premier, but it is just for now. As further back, meanwhile, we've got some change of the foot. Joel Loudon being passing at Stephen Donnelly, who's had a lot of wheel spin making his way through Spoon Curve, and all these drivers right now just continue to try and find what is the time, the temperature, and also the optimum line. And of course, the racing line may not be optimum given the way the water settles on the circuit. But as everybody continues to push onwards here, well, definitely a huge amount of spray, more rain falling as well. I think we are set to have even more rain coming as the day goes on, as this is only going to make it even more difficult. But right now, after one lap of racing, It's definitely not looking difficult for the Premier leader and overall leader of Ricardo Luis Pera, who leads by half a second over Raz Harper, who's your elite leader in second place. Sean Connor sits in third, ahead of Richard Simnor, having found his way past right at the start of the race. Then behind the DCW Racing driver is Joe Nathan for Rage Against the Game Esports, and then Thomas Weston holds sixth. He is none other than your Evo leader at this time, but that's a big slide loose there in towards turn number 2. The rear of that Ferrari all over the road for Weston, but he just about keeps it pointed in a straight line right now as Darren Sharples then sits in 7th as your pro leader, and he leads a 4-way pro pack of himself, Collicott, Story and Halzoy, and that's how your top 10 stands, with Samuel Clark best of the rest in 11th, and he's found his way past Wayne Douglas, who's had a trip down the order, and well, I'm not quite sure what's happened to Wayne Douglas, but I'm sure we'll be able to find an answer in due course. But everyone right now keeping it together or thereabouts, but as they make the one to this second lap, of course, we'll need a replay of some of the moments that have happened from the open lap in due course, but not before we get this action from Alan Lever, getting a good run out of turn number 7, up the inside initially of Joe Sparrow, who lifts off the throttle there. He's got a lot of understeer in that Aston Martin, and here comes Richard Jones up the outside, but Sparrow's still there. They rub paint as they come down towards Degner 2. Joe Sparrow right now, for all the lack of pace he has, he's not giving up here as they make their way up towards the hairpin, and it's still going to be too wide here as now Nathan Anstis queues up and tries to figure out what to do, but sweep around does Jones through the kink of 10, and it's a lovely move there for the 199 driver for Slow and Steady Racing. And right now he's definitely getting the hurry up here. I don't think he's living up to his team name. I think he's going fast and steady instead. But from what is Slow and Steady machinery to what is none other than the UKSimRacing Hill machine of Edward Berry, well, he's all over the back of Jordan Jones. As we've had some drama for Sean Connor up the road. We're going to understand what's happened there. I believe that's a spoon curve as I'm hearing in my ear. And we've also had potentially some technical issues for Wayne Douglas's car, which we're trying to ascertain at the moment, although that might be a glitch in our timing tower. But meanwhile, Jordan Jones still ahead of Edward Berry, as Berry pushing him hard, but both of these drivers know where the limits are, and this battle for third place in the Evo class is starting to build up very nicely. Further back, we do have Hendrik Zilka, Robin Powney and Luke Sherlock all together. We've also had some drama off screen for Jack Barker, who dropped all the way down to 33rd place. We're going to get a replay of that when we can. Right now, all these drivers pushing onwards as, hold up a second, Thomas Weston has dropped all the way down from 6th place. He's had a nightmare at 130R. We're not quite sure how he's managed to achieve it, but we've seen the outcome, and the outcome is he's now fallen to 2nd place at Evo, with Richard White only 2 places up the road. Now your Evo leader as they make the way down to another lap, and indeed this grid is tossing and turning as quickly as that, and right now I think all these drivers would have been losing sleep over this going into today, with the expectation there could have been wet weather on the cards, and indeed that wet weather is in full force as Wayne Douglas goes very wide there at turn number 2, just keeps it on the road for now, does the DC Motorsport driver, but almost a big mistake there, and well, if he'd gone any wider it would have proven costly as he weaves and winds his way around the circuit, and right now the car absolutely flexing all over the road here, and that is because Douglas is just struggling to find the optimum line here, and I can imagine when that Mercedes, with the amount of grunt it has for those rear wheels, with that 6.3 litre V8, it is not an easy car to tame in the dry and low gears, let alone in the wet. But hold up a second, that's Mark Collicott, parked up, literally in the gravel trap there at turn number 7. Can he get it going again? Yes, he can, and as the 269 driver gets himself back up to speed, yellow flags are waving, everyone respectfully steers aside, but that is Mark Collicott all the way down from being inside the top 10 down to 23rd, and I wonder if he was aided on his adventure there or whether it was of his own volition. Well, we'll soon see as... Oh, that's Wayne Douglas. Douglas into the barrier coming out of Degner 2. So Douglas has been sent on a round. Meanwhile, there's even more drama. James Conley now turns sideways there into turn number 11. Or through 10 into 11, I should say. He comes back on the road here, where it's all going wrong in lap number 3. Lap number 1 was just the starting point. Meanwhile, lap number 2 was the tipping point. And lap number 3, where everything's absolutely exploded here on our screens. But goodness me, it's absolute pandemonium in the mid-pack at the moment. And James Conley now down to 22nd place. We've got Alex Brown and Stephen Donnelly behind. Well, Stephen Donnelly, oh my goodness, Stephen Donnelly can a lot of speed there by accident and hitting Alex Brown right on the back of the car, and in the end, well, that's not the way Donnelly expects it to go, as Brown given a little bit of a push forward, but he's been able to keep it together into spoon, and I wonder there whether Brown had to lift off the throttle because the rear probably let go coming down through turn number 12, the fast right-hander of 100R, and as a result, it may have been, Donnelly, who had a lot of speed in that Ford Mustang, did not have time to anticipate that he was suddenly going to have a lifting BMW in front of him that was just trying to get under control. Well, it's worked out for Brown, but it's not worked out for Donnelly whatsoever, and therefore a shock to the system for both. But as they head on through, Ross Young rejoins after running wide out 130R, able to keep it pointed in a straight line, not spinning it. And indeed, at 130R, that's where you'll see the biggest accidents. And normally, every 5 years, normally the safety barriers at that corner are refreshed just for the simple reason in the means of safety and trying to make sure that racing drivers make it through 130R when they get it wrong, absolutely unscathed. Well, the barriers are normally raised, and also the amount of protection up that end of the circuit is normally increased. But right now, Ross Young protects himself by just simply staying on the road. And as he does so, looking a bit further back, Wayne Douglas, who fell all the way down on the order after his moment at Degner 2. Well, he's down the recovery driver. He tucks up the inside of Luke Sherlock, and the rain continues incessantly off the road. That is Joel Loudon, who brings himself back on, but not without losing 2 places to the 2 Premier drivers. And right now, everything continues to change, albeit what has not changed at the very front of the field. Oh, goodness me, where's Raz Harper? I was going to say, the fact that your 2 leaders were still together, and Raz Harper's added off there at Degner 1. He rejoins, and the DDK Racing Team driver releases the leader elite into the hands of Richard Simnor. But guess who's right behind him? You guessed it right. If you said Joe Nathan, there he is. And suddenly the 2 championship contenders, they are right together once again, batting for first and second place. And with Simnor ahead of Nathan, is this going to be a race much like at Interlagos, albeit with the added risk factor of rain? Will it be a race whereby whoever's leading in the early stage of the race is the race winner because the other can't find a way through on strategy on track? Well, never say never, of course, and that is going to be the big question we have over the 51.5 minutes remaining here, which is, can Nathan pull an ace out of his sleeve, whereas Richard Simnor was not able to do so at Interlagos last round. But with that, as things calm down for a brief moment, and now that I've said it, I'm sure pandemonium is going to ensue, we need to get a look back at some of the major moments from the start of the race, including what happened to Ashley Coupland and Daniel Pays right at the beginning. So this was down to turn number 1 for the pair and the whole field, and under braking. Oh, goodness me, in synchronicity there. Both of them braking on the white pit exit line. No grip on that. The relentless racing driver there was mostly under control, but Daniel Pays, meanwhile, came absolutely gallivanting back from the grass onto the circuit. The car really became uncontrollable there, and well, they say the BMW is a bathtub, and the same for the Ford Mustang, but then both drivers there ended up in arrears, and both had to tow to the pits with major damage. Meanwhile, we then had this happen a little bit later on for Matt Hoyland on the opening lap. And this was Hoyland making his way up into the S's. And as he did so, look around the outside and the Ford Mustang. Ooh, goodness me. That's a bit of an interesting contact there. And, well, I can imagine that might have been excessive wheel spin on a downshift there. Because it looked so. In fact, the 2 cars were running nicely parallel to each other. But Hoyland went on around there for Dexterous Motorsports. And that would be a very frustrating one. We had this for Rob Windsor as well on the opening lap. This was making his way, by the looks of things, trying to understand. Well, he'd started from the pit lane, I think, and the rear of the car let go at turn number 2. So an easy mistake to make there. This is what happened to Jack Barker on lap number 1. And he made racing driver attacking for 27th place at the time, and that was fighting with Shane Cotter. But in the end, goes wide at turn number 12. Oh, goodness me, the car gradually there unsettled. Luke Sherlock, unfortunately, being in the right place at the wrong time, helping Jack Barker on his way to the barrier. And I think that'll be a racing instant between the 2 of them, because Barker in a car that in the end he was trying to get under control. Sherlock just happened to be alongside him at that time. Sherlock had no malintent there, but a very frustrating one if your name's Jack Barker. I can understand the made-for-racing driver at this point might have been absolutely fuming with what happened, but still carrying on. And then this happened to Luke Sherlock on lap number 2. We avoided the drama for the most part on lap number 1, but lap number 2, what went wrong? When braking into turn 1, you can tell what happens when he puts the left-hand side wheels on the pit exit line, much like what happened to Pays, and also none other than our relentless racing driver Ashley Coupland on lap number 1. The same fate befell Luke Sherlock there in the Pennzoil BMW. But we also had this for Sean Conn on lap number 2. Indeed, right now, we promise you this isn't a best hit, so everybody getting it wrong in the rain. But Sean Cotter, who is leading in the elite run behind Raz Harper, well, he just had a big spin there through Spoon Curve of his own volition, taking a bit too much exit curve, and the car just deciding to go completely around. Thomas Weston, meanwhile, your Evo leader at the time, comfortably in 6th place, carried way too much speed with 130 on. The car went completely round on him. Did he manage to get it around before it touched the barrier? Yes, he did. Brilliant there. And indeed, right now, if I did have my number cards under my desk, I'd be raising a perfect 10 there, because that was very well held by Thomas Weston. He's lost places, no doubt about it, but what he's gained in return is the respect of me and the commentary booth for controlling it, but also the fact he's been able to gain himself a second chance of going racing once again. And, well, goodness me, ladies and gents, but what a start to this race it has been. And we still have the question on lap number 3 of what happened to Mark Collicott. Let's play detective for this one. This was Collicott coming through turn number 7, and the rear of the car just letting go go there, went a bit wide of apex, had to stamp on the brakes. Oh, goodness me, a Mikey Story there, not having time to react. I think he was hoping Collicott would roll off the road, but Collicott in the end managed to get the Ford Mustang to stop in the road, and that's when the contact happened between the two of them. And we had lastly this for Wayne Douglas. This was Douglas making his way out of Degner 1 into 2. He'd already got it wrong at Degner 1. Degner 2 contact there. I believe that was with the car at the time of Mikey Story. And in the end, the two got hooked together. And Douglas came off the worst of the pair. And those are the big stories of your opening 3 laps of the race, ladies and gentlemen, as we now make our way back to your live racing. So as we come on back, we'll still more to unfold, no doubt about it. And we didn't want to spend too long in replay mode, just for the simple reason that we have got plenty more racing to come. And that was the best part of 6 minutes of replays there. But that fills us in on all the big moments from the opening 3 laps of the race. We'll get plenty more replays later on as things continue to unfold. Speaking of things unfolding, that's Stephen Donnelly, who we just see get it very well. That is at 130R, unless I'm mistaken. In fact, that is well before 130R. My apologies. That's going into Degner 1, where he's managed to make himself get it right out of turn 7. I can imagine that's a Mark Collicott manoeuvre there in terms of a similar incident. He's fallen down to 25th place. But as he keeps himself going, he's now got Robin Powney for close company behind, and also Joe Loudon with him, as these drivers right now continue to push each other onwards, and Powney are just trying to stay out of trouble here. Although you could say that's the game for everybody. But meanwhile, as we look up the road, Joe Nathan loses it out to Raz Harper as they come out of 130R. Nathan there looked as though he was trying to get the car back under control. I suspect that might have been a lot of exit curb unsettling the rear end of that Ferrari. But Harper does get back ahead, and Richard Simnor is now allowed to lead the elite class by 4 seconds over Harper and Nathan. Nathan looking now on the inside in towards turn number 1. Is he going to be able to find it? The answer is no. He's far too far back, and he realises there's the pit exit line. It's the one place you don't put a tyre. But as he tires of trying to chase down Raz Harper, and I think he'll want a much more straightforward race. Meanwhile, Darren Sharples, he's your pro leader, and he's started to break away as your pro leader. He's in 5th place overall with Sean Connor between himself and Krista Halsoy. You can see Halsoy there in the rear of the picture, and Sean Connor is looking around the outside. The Connor Bros driver here right now has got a face full of spray as we ride on board with him. I don't know how on earth he can see that. Well, it's that windscreen wiper not doing that much, to be honest with you. As much as it does look as though it's doing a lot, that spray is absolutely horrendous. But as he comes down through turn number 6 and in towards 7, you can see they're snaking all over the road here. It's so reflective, the road surface right now. You would think it's all standing water. It almost is. And as they head over the crest of 7, right now, Sharples, with all the understeer in the world in that Mercedes, is trying to get the car ready for Degner 1. Connerby was just trying to find his line for Degner 1. Given the amount of spray, and the American driver right now doing very well to stay this close, as Sharples there slides his way through Degner 2. I think that's how he's got to drive the Mercedes. He's essentially got to drive on its rear end, not on the front. As they head in towards Kobayashi corner, well, right now defending hard is Sharples. You can understand why. He wants to keep Connor between himself and Halsoy. But as they exit the bend, Connor there runs out wide. He has to back off the throttle through fear of spinning up the right-hand side tyres on the exit curbing. And Connor right now just being made to wait his turn. But goodness me, this race is absolutely on a knife edge. And indeed, we are only 15 minutes in. And right now, we have got some big battles getting underway. And for Krista Halsoy, this could be a huge opportunity for him to really strike back in the Pro Championship here if he can find the win. Sharples is going to try and deny it, obviously. He wants the win for himself to give himself an opportunity to chase the top 3 in the Pro Class Championship. But right now, Halsoy is the man. If he wins this, suddenly Mikey Story's lead is going to look quite negligible, and Hendrik Zilka and also other drivers' advantages are going to be cut away. But meanwhile, as we cut away from what's happening here, we've just had Raz Harper and Joe Nathan change places again. Nathan, from what I'm hearing in my ear, is making a habit of running wide at 130R, and that explains things as, oh my good lord, Richard White's into the barrier. There's bits of car everywhere, and as he makes his way back around, how on earth has he got there? Thomas Weston was at the scene of the incident as well, not pointing the finger at Weston, but he was there as what was White was trying to get himself turned around. But Richard White, who was leading Evo for a brief moment, has lost out, and that's before we now make our way back to the Connor, Sharples and Halsoy battle with what is Connor ahead now of Sharples. That happened in the Casio Triangle, and meanwhile that is Krista Halsoy right on the back of Sharples. Indeed, everywhere you look right now, there's action everywhere. This is Interlagos all over again, and as they head in towards what will be the S's again, well, right now Darren Sharples holding on for dear life, and Samuel Clark, the second place Premier driver, has suddenly emerged back into 8th place right behind this. So I think Clark right now fancying his chances here of being able to get involved, but what can he do given the fact he's got plenty of places to pick off before he's going to be close enough to fight Ricardo Luis Pereira? who compared to Clark is the best part of 21.5 seconds up the road at this time. We'll have to wait and see. It only takes one small mistake from anybody here to completely turn a race upside down. Not saying it's going to happen to our race leader, but you never know. And that's the thing about motorsport. It's not over until they reach the checkered flag. It sounds obvious, but it really is not as to what could potentially happen. These drivers right now pushing onwards, and it does seem that Sharples looking to be holding on just for a little bit longer as Housewife right now, I think, getting too close to be able to see his race lines and having to back off for a brief moment there. But meanwhile, we need to back off of the race here to understand what exactly has happened to none other than Richard White after that huge moment that saw him going around. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to see, because I do believe we are going to get a replay, and here we go as we take a trip back in time. And what we're going to see is as follows. So this is Richard White recovering, so we didn't quite catch the start of it, but we caught the end of it. Can we go back in time a little bit earlier? Yes, we can, and this is what happened to Richard White. So leading the Evo class, throws it to 130R, takes the apex curve, and the rear of the car just completely comes loose. Oh my goodness! And that, I believe, was Nathan Anstis. No, that was Alan Lever being collected there. Everyone else made it safely on through, but suddenly Nathan Anstis' car being propelled up onto two wheels for a brief moment, and that was an absolute nightmare moment. This was the on-board from Nathan Anstis' perspective, and as he made his way into the corner, in fact, that was not Anstis in contact. My apologies, that's Alan Lever. I'm getting my names mixed up here. Well, Anstis seeing what was going on, but what about for Alan Lever? This is what he saw in the onboard. So he was chasing White at the time. As he made his way into the corner, it's going to be White that suddenly goes around. Lever looks to the right hand side, and boom! Up into two wheels for a brief moment, and from the sky back down to terra firma. And the UKSimRacing Mansell driver somehow keeping it away from the barrier. So a nasty one there, but able to survive it, and that explains the story as we make our way back to your live racing. As we come back, looking on board with Darren Sharples for a brief moment, and well, your sixth place driver overall still holding on for now as he makes his way on around, looking comfortable at least for a brief moment. But of course, that comfort factor could go away as we do look to the class positions meanwhile, and goodness me, what a race it has been thus far. Up and down this order, there has been so much happening. It's absolutely unreal to think we've still got another 40 minutes plus a final lap to go in absolutely treacherous conditions here, as we do say hello to several of you in the YouTube chat. We do apologise for not saying hello until now, and we say hello there to Nathan Anstis or Anstis Races, also to Richard Simnor, also to Steve Rubino. We'll say hello to Mark Kent. I hope you're doing well, Mark. It's good to see you here. We'll say hello to Alan Lever or Budget Racing Noob, and we also say hello there to none other than, I believe, Krista Halzoy. And it's good to see you all commenting with regards to what is the fog, the rain, the conditions, and absolutely challenging all the way round. And indeed, right now, I think all our drivers here absolutely superb for committing to the bit. All 36 drivers who've made their way here today. Unfortunately, we have had two retirements of this race. One in the elite class, that was Ashley Coupland for his nasty shunt at the start of the race, and Wayne Douglas as well after the incident at Degner 2. The car, unfortunately, into the barrier, and it's all gone wrong. But meanwhile, what's going right there for Rob Windsor is a place gained overall on Alex Brown, moving himself up there to 24th as we focus on Alex Brown. And we also say hello to Simon Hartley, who waves a hand, and we wave back to him, and hope you're doing well, Simon. But all the drivers right now definitely trying to get themselves into the more strategic mindsets at this point in the race, albeit I could imagine there's not much time to really think here, as Christian Maltrek now drops the ball at 130R. He runs out wide in the Miracle MA70 BMW. Thankfully, it's no more than a run wide onto the runoff area. If it had been any more than that, understandably so, I think it could have been all the way to the gravel, perhaps to the tyre barrier. So Mikey Storr will now move into third place in Pro. And given the fact he started in what was fourth, I think you'll be happy he's gradually inching forward with Maltrek behind him and still on a mission to try and close some places down. A bit further back into the pit lane has come Edward Berry from second place in the Evo class and what was 14th overall. So he's coming in. I wonder whether this is intentionally an undercut strategy being deployed here by the UKSimRacing driver. He's decided to come in as soon as possible because he knows the pace of the field right now is not that quick, and as a result what he is gambling on is the idea that by going for this pit stop he'll come out right at the back of the field, and in doing so he will buy himself clear track, and now he'll just be able to focus on one thing and one thing only, and that is running his race. It could be a hugely beneficial approach if he doesn't make a mistake, but that is the thing for Berry. He's got to come out into some clear track which as he emerges from the pit lane, I can tell you he's come out essentially in what is the pack of cars. Oh, hold the phone on that one, because that's Chris Alzoy snapping loose their code out of what is none other than Degner 2. The Track 6 Racing Aston Martin almost going into the inside barrier there, and Alzoy just pushing a little bit too hard, chasing down Darren Sharples, and Samuel Clark puts himself between the two of them. But goodness me, right now, if Alzoy can get it wrong, you know anybody can get it wrong here, because right now the Norwegian driver, very formidable in the wet, very good in the dry. He is one of the masters of changing conditions, but right now, well, you can definitely see the fact that even he is struggling out here. I think everybody's having difficulty, as we have had something go very wrong for Christian Maltrek off camera. He's dropped a long way down to 4th place in the pro class and 6 seconds off the back of Mikey Story. We don't quite know where that's happened. We suspect that might be in the first half of a lap, that he's run wide and ended up being beached on the grass and had to push the car back on. But as he's made his way on around through Spoon Curve, you can see right now taking a very wide and tentative line there, and that's a driver who's definitely trying to get his confidence back after an error. And I think right now that BMW might be a little bit worse aware in terms of its tyres, albeit these wet tyres can go the entire race distance. You don't normally need to change wet tyres over 60 minutes of race in the GT3 class here on iRacing. And right now I think all the drivers here just trying to see what they can do before the pit stop, where they'll need to take the fuel. They probably won't need to take the tyres, and there is no prospect, I can promise you, of a dry tyre coming out today. In fact, if anyone was to put on a dry tyre, well, I can't exactly use the words I would like to describe what I perhaps think of their mind, but I can tell you one thing, that would perhaps not be the most recommended idea, and it might be a gamble that would definitely only see them go all the way to the very back of the field. But meanwhile, in the front of the field, it's Ricardo Luis Pereira, who right now is absolutely storming away with this in the Premier class by 24.5 seconds over Samuel Clark. And overall, it does seem as though he is holding a very comfortable 4-second gap to Richard Simnor, who you see there not in the BMW. That is a car that's almost a lap down in front of him. That's Daniel Hayes. Indeed, Richard Simnor is the DCW racing at yellow and blue Ford Mustang, who tucks up the inside there and takes the place off of his rival, albeit puts a lap on him really, but takes the place on the circuit. Be happy with that. That's been made nice and easy. But from what was an easy move there, Sean Connor's had a spin. That's at Degner 1. So Connor, who was recovering and had recovered his way all the way to 5th place, he's now dropped down to 9th place for a misdemeanor. And well, the Connor Pros driver falling backwards to 9th right now in that McLaren 720S Evo, and he'll be wondering, what do I have to do to make progress? Because he qualified so well as well, 3rd place in what was the elite class and 4th place overall, but right now this definitely is not the way he wants the race to be going. As he continues to push onwards. Meanwhile, we do have a bit of change further down the order. James Connolly has just found his way past Richard Jones. They're fighting over 4th place of the Premier class here, as Connolly, he's brave in the exit curves. Jones is showing no signs of wanting to dare touch them, as we ride on board with your slow and steady racing 199 driver. So through 100R they come, and as they do, ooh, this be Jones, they're blindsided by the spray, lifts off immediately and really joins, but Colley goes deep as a result. I think Colley right now is struggling. Jones is struggling here. Both of them are literally trying to stay on the road, let alone put together a good lap of the battle. So this is going to come down to the survival of the fittest. But as they head up towards 130R, well, right now you can understand if James Connolly's putting you thinking to himself, okay, if it goes wrong at Spoon like that, what's it going to be at 130R? Jones is thinking, can I get closer to put some more pressure on him? But can he actually see anything there as he makes his way to the corner? The answer is, well, somehow he can, and just keeps him in the white lines. Colley runs out wide. This could be Jones's opportunity here. He's going to try and go around the outside of the braking, and he will take that 4th place in Premier and what is 13th place back immediately, as he now makes his way onto a 12th tour of the circuit. Well, both of these drivers head on through, and right now I don't think that's the end of this battle between the two of them. I wouldn't be surprised if it continues to swing back and forth. And as they come down towards turn 1, gap 4.5 tenths, they start the run, and by the end of it, it'll be 3.5 tenths. But Connie backing off nice and early there and decides to give himself all the visibility he can. Mark Collicott, meanwhile, makes his way past Ross Young, who's just recovered from a spin at Casio Triangle, as Luke Sherlock gets it wrong, coming down through turn number 17, and in the end, he's going to try and recover that car, but the problem, oh my goodness, another one goes round. That's Hoyland going sliding on around and into the pit lane. Well, I don't think he wanted to come into the pits, but he's got no decision-making power now. He will be forced into the pit, so Hoyland comes on in, and that will force his pit stop early. Luke Sherlock, meanwhile, he avoids the fate of being consigned to the pit lane, and he carries on there, and I think Sherlock just got the power down a little bit too soon, coming out of turn number 17 on a slightly tighter line. He needed it for the visibility because of the spray off the car in front, but in return, that almost cost him what was a premature trip to the pit lane. As Alex Brown, meanwhile, with the 5th place Evo driver, he's got Joe Sparrow and Jack Barker behind him, and keep in mind that Sparrow and Barker have both had pit stops so far in order to take on some fuel and also get cars repaired. And right now, Brown, I think he just wants to try and survive, and I wouldn't be surprised if he potentially lets them both go. Albeit, he does have to keep in mind that Simon Hartley is 12 seconds behind and is closing quite quickly. So Brown, therefore, can't afford to lose too much time. Sparrow looks up the inside there into turn 6, but Brown just holds his nerve there and recognises the fact that while Sparrow is eager to get on through, he's got to obey the same rules as everybody else, which is you make a pass cleanly and fairly, but Sparrow knows that, and therefore Brown, relying on the fact that he can hold his line given the amount of advantage he has into the quarter apex. But there's Jack Barker looking for a cheeky peek up the inside of Sparrow. He wants to clear him as well. The sub-bottle job made for Racing Machine right now. Still in this race, still in it to win it. That's the thing about Jack Barker. He always gives it his all, no matter how bad it gets. And well, this Lamborghini Huracan definitely has been a bit of a Marmite car for him this season. When it's been working, it's worked incredibly well. When it's not been working, it has been the equivalent of his time with the Acura in the previous season. And many of you will remember what was quite a messy divorce between him and the Acura come the end of season 15. But from divorces and marriages to right now, what is an absolute fight on circuit, Christian Maltrek makes his way onto another lap. Darren Sharples makes his way into the pit lane meanwhile. So Sharples decides enough's enough as he comes on down. And he releases the pro field, with Krista Halsoy now taking the mantle of being pro leader. But as these drivers continue to push onwards, well, I would imagine those pit stops will be coming over a much more extended window. Given the wet conditions here, we are not using anywhere near as much fuel as we would in the dry. And therefore, I wouldn't be surprised if we see drivers go the best part of 50 minutes before requiring their pit stop for fuel. I don't think anyone's going to be doing the no-stop strategy here. I don't think they've got the fuel tank for it. But given our typical pit window is in the region of around 20 minutes into the race to 40 to 45 minutes into the race, well, here you could say that pit window is going to extend to the best part of what will be about 8 minutes into the race, all the way through to about 50 to 52 minutes into the race because of the low fuel consumption they're going through. But meanwhile, look at this. Luke Sherlock's having some fun here as he looks up the inside of Shane Connor. He's just got to be careful breaking on that pit entry line, or pit exit line, I should say. And indeed does a brilliant job there of making sure not to, as Connor gets it wrong and goes spinning off the road there. And for Shane Connor, much like his brother Sean earlier on, well, the Connor Bros teammates right now both experience difficulty at different points of the circuit. But Shane Connor there going sliding on around, but gets it back together. Sherlock will therefore be promoted to 7th place in Premier and is enjoying a very good run here. As meanwhile, hold up a second, we've just had a change of overall leader, and for Ricardo Luis Pereira, it's a lead he has not just given up to Richard Simnor. I'm hearing there's been a bit of a mistake from the Aston Martin driver. Can we find out what's happened? We can, and here's a replay to explain. So this was your Premier leader making his way into 130 on the car, not in the right position at all. You could see he was struggling to pull it over to the right-hand side, to the outside of the corner entry, and in the end dipped 2 wheels on the runoff area on the exit, and that's what sent the car around. A very odd moment there. I wonder whether he hit a bit of standing water coming down the backstretch in towards 130R, and that just pinched the car and forced him to have to try and essentially chuck the car to the right, and in doing so completely compromises entry line there. That's a very odd one, but he's got it back together, but he's lost the overall lead. But as we come on back then to your racing, still more to come, no doubt about it. And well, if it can happen to even the fastest driver out there, it can happen to anyone. And right now we are at the halfway point on our 14th lap. And Richard Simnor is now your leader overall and in the elite class. And the DCW Racing driver is going to be feeling quite happy with this, especially given the fact that the big question you might be asking is, where is Joe Nathan? Well, right now, Nathan is out of the race. Unfortunately, Nathan's been involved in some sort of incident, which we have not seen since his previous moment where he got it wrong. And well, Joe Nathan's retirement from this race is now a golden opportunity for Richard Simnor to potentially be able to add a win to his belt, and with it be able to extend his championship lead by a considerable margin. Of course, for Joe Nathan, he will now consign this round as a drop score for the season. So therefore, it's not all clear for Richard Simnor. He's still going to have to put the work in, but it just gives him a bit of a confidence factor. If he can win in absolutely treacherous conditions like this, he can perhaps afford a second place in much drier conditions by comparison, especially when we've only got 2 rounds to go after this one. as he makes his way down the back stretch. Ricardo Luis Pereira gives chase, and Raz Harper, well, the DDK Racing Team driver, holding on to second place in the lead and third overall at the moment. This could be a golden opportunity here for a big haul of points, and we haven't seen that in quite some time for him. But meanwhile, things are getting a bit exciting further down the order with Edward Berry, the second of our Evo drivers in the McLaren 720S Evo for UKSimRacing Hill, trying to put pressure on Ross Young in front of him as Berry gets it wrong. The car goes around, but thankfully he manages to roll it backwards off the road, albeit into the gravel. That's not going to help at all, but thankfully he's able to get the car rolling, and as he does so, Richard White in the sister team UKSimRacing machine does pick up a place. As meanwhile, what was there, the BMW, I think that was Alex. No, that's not Alex Brown. My apologies. Trying to discern who that was. Well, there was a BMW there that came absolutely blazing hot. I think that was Richard Jones. Yes, it was! As Edward Berry completely mistimes his braking zone there into Kobayashi Bend. And as he does so, Berry off the road once again. He'll lose another overall place to Luke Sherlock. So he loses 2 overall places. 1 to Jones, 1 to Sherlock. But the problem is right now, if this continues, when will it become a loss of Evo places? Because Alex Brown is 20 seconds behind. But understandably, right now he may not be that far back for much longer if Berry can't get it back together. But his confidence has grown over the season, and right now, this has been perhaps the trickiest round in terms of conditions. So therefore, with everybody getting it wrong, well, for Berry, all he's got to do is now find a way not to get it wrong and just make sure he gets it right for the remainder of the day, because 2 wrongs do not make a right, and if anything, I suspect 2 wrongs will make it a very quick trip to the pit lane. As he makes his way on upwards towards what will be turn number 14. Well, right now, Luke Sherlock seems to be enjoying himself out there, and this is some of the finest driving we've seen from the privateer. And, well, he's had a bit of a difficult start to this race, but right now he seems to have got it all dialed in, and he is chasing after Richard Jones, and his pace is quite impressive. The only problem for Sherlock is that he will need to make a trip to the pit lane at some point. And as soon as I say that, he does so there. I can promise you that wasn't scripted, ladies and gentlemen. And, well, Sherlock and I think along similar lines. But as he makes his way down the pits, it's going to be a classic stop here. This will put him towards the bottom end of the Premier Top 10. But there's still plenty of opportunities here to make progress over the remaining distance. But as he comes to a stop, meanwhile, we look to Mark Collicott. And the 11th place overall runner, 5th in the Premier, well, in the Pro class, I should say. The DCW Racing driver right now has got Sean Connor for close company, but thankfully that's an elite driver and not a fellow pro, who would ideally like to chase down Nathan Anstis. But the problem with that is that Anstis is 14.5 seconds away from him and is gradually gapping him. Now, if you are wondering why the timing tower, the class timing towers on the left-hand side of your screen are not in their regular order of Elite, followed by Pro, then Premier, then Evo from top to bottom, they do shuffle based on who in which class has set the fastest lap overall, and it is Premier right now that holds on to the overall fastest lap in the hands of Ricardo Luis Pereira with a 2-minute 14.20. It's an absolute monster of a lap from the Aston Martin driver, faster than what anybody else has been able to do, and he's just made his way down pit lane as I look out my commentary booth window for his one and only stop. And that's why the pros are all the way down towards the bottom, because the pros are struggling a bit for pace at the moment. But Chris de Houseau being the fastest lap holder for in fact, no, it's Christian Maltrek, and he's just right now trying to make sure he gets that bonus point if he can. But all these drivers continuing onwards, and we've still got more pit stops to come as we have a new Premier class leader. It is Samuel Clark here for Dexterous Motorsports. However, keep in mind he has yet to pit, whereas Ricardo Luis Pereira has pitted. So therefore, Luis Pereira, you would imagine, as he is the highest placed driver who has pitted thus far in the Premier class, he would be the favourite to be leading after all the strategic pit stops have played out, unless anybody makes a mistake. Alternatively, someone somehow magically makes it a zero-stop strategy. But I think that would be a bit of wishful thinking. But it has been an absolutely terrific race so far. I think we've got even more to come as Mark Collicott gives way to Sean Connor and makes his way down the pit lane. Connor then moves up to 11th place, and the elite driver who's running third in class right now, he took a long way to catch up to Raz Harper and also Richard Simnor. However, he's not given up here in the number 366 McLaren, and one would imagine that right now he's motivated by the thought that at any moment one of them could get it wrong, such as he's got it wrong earlier on. But behind him, we've got a bit of a fight going on. Stephen Donnelly, yet to pit, 5th in Pro, is all over the back of Christian Maltrek, the 4th place runner in the same class who has pitted. So Donnelly there or thereabouts. And the Ford Mustang driver here for JSD Motorsports in the Haribo machine, fight in the car every step of the way, coming out of turn number 5 in towards 6. But they're just trying to find his line. Oh my goodness, that was a lot of standing water he picked up on the front right tyre there. Coming through turn number 6, you can see the puddle that's accreting at the bottom of the corner's exit. And well, that tight exit line is not a safe line, but the rain that's fallen here, and in fact the amount of rain we continue to have, the amount of water on the circuit is not budging. I would argue at some points on the track it's actually getting worse, with the standing water really dominating the apex curves, the likes of the Degnas as well. Degna too, you have got a lot of camber on that corner, and that will force the water to puddle right on the apex. Same here at Kobayashi Bend, and that is why you are seeing so many drivers decide to go as deep as they possibly can, and those who stay close, they do so at their own risk. But right now, Stephen Donnelly, after those sideways moments, as he gets it rolled there through 12, and well, it slides. Does it slide back onto the tarmac? Yes, it does. But who's coming up behind him? Is anybody coming up behind? It's Ross Young, but Stephen Donnelly, thankfully, had a lot of space to play with there. And, well, no trouble between the drivers there, but Stephen Donnelly gets it wrong whilst we're riding on board. And, well, Christian Maltrek is given a bit of breathing room. But around comes Young then, making his way down towards the backstretch. And as he does, well, what's happening elsewhere, I hear you ask? Well, still at the very front of the field, we look to Richard Simnor, still leading this race. And right now by 30 seconds over Krista Halsoy. He is very much in control, albeit yet to pit. The same for Halsoy, the same for Clark, and Lever behind. And then your highest place pit stopper is Raz Harper, who has in fact got ahead of Ricardo Luis Pereira as a result, I suspect, of an overtake that has been made via the pits. And indeed, we can confirm that's happened. So therefore, Luis Pereira has lost out as a result of the pit stops, but he has not lost out, we suspect, to the Premier lead, which is the most important thing. As much as he would love to take an overall win, if not an overall podium, he's got to put the priority on the points, because that's where the championship crown could come, and a big trophy with it. But Richard Simnor right now, he's looking very much comfortable at the very front, and I can imagine DCW Racing have been on the pit wall to him, and have said to him, Richard, stay out as long as you can. You do not want to be near anyone right now. The pace is looking very good, and Simnor indeed is looking to be in control of this for at least the time being. Well, we come back to Harper and Luis Pereira. They fight over 5th overall at the moment, what is effective 2nd place as we understand it. And I don't think Luis Pereira's read the manuscript here, which says that he's got to stay behind Raz Harper for the remainder of the race, because he is right there as we ride aboard the dashboard there of the Portuguese driver's Aston Martin, and he is still looking for a fight here. He's not giving in. I love this from Ricardo Luis Pereira. I don't know what's happened since he went to Interlagos last week, but we have seen him back to his very best in the Mobil 1 machine, and right now, well, if he carries on this momentum for the remainder of the season, he could theoretically still take the Premier Championship. He's not that far back at this time, so therefore that is going to be on the mind of many a Premier driver, none more so than Championship leader Samuel Clark, because Luis Pereira right now, he is absolutely looking to be a monster as he heads in towards 130R. You can see there Harper taking a lot more speed by comparison. That's Harper's confidence in that Ford Mustang. Luis Pereira 9, there's a lot more to gamble here, and I think Harper just wants to try and close down Simnor as much as he can. But from the onboard we go, and here is Krista Halsoy, carries on with Samuel Clark alongside. Richard Simnor, a quick pit stop there. He comes back out in 3rd place. So he completely leapfrogs Raz Harper as a result of the pit stop, and the same for Luis Pereira. So Simnor right now is in control of this race, and he's in control of it by a margin of 13 seconds. A very good pit stop there for the Ford Mustang driver, and based on the stationary times, one would imagine that Simnor has been fuel saving non-stop over the race distance, because the stationary time for Simnor was 14.2 seconds in the pits. For Raz Harper, 21.88 seconds. For Ricardo Luis Pereira, exactly 22 seconds. So I think they might have changed the tyre or two. Alternatively, they might need to put a lot more fuel in, whereas Simnor, I wouldn't be surprised here if the team has said to him, just run at about 75% of your pace, you'll just win this race by not getting it wrong. And indeed, that seems to be what he's doing, because of course, GT3 cars, they do have fuel and engine maps. Our drivers are not allowed to touch them, however. That was removed as a result of the changes to the IMSA ruling set of what was 2024 on iRacing, and therefore our drivers do have to work with the fuel maps that they do have, although the throttle maps, they can change on these cars by comparison. But as they're coming out right now for Richard Simnor, fuel map or throttle map aside, he is definitely mapping his way to a race win and making it a return to victory very quickly. But as he comes on through, well, meanwhile, we look back down the order to Joe Sparrow, who is trying to hunt down Mark Collicott, who's only 8 tenths in front of him. As we do see Collicott peel his way into the pit lane. Sparrow stays out. Collicott is in for another pit stop. I believe that might be to replace the rear wing on the car that has somehow been waylaid. So Sparrow will gain 19th place overall. And he's got Luke Sherlock not too far behind him. There is Sherlock in the rear of the picture. He's back up to 8th after his pit stop. But Rob Windsor is there with him. So Windsor right now is starting to grow in confidence, but Sherlock here, he's definitely doing an absolutely fantastic job, and he's on course for what will be one of his season best performances. And you can definitely say that for him today, whilst he did have that slight altercation with Barker in the early stages, he's been able to stay out of most of the trouble, and therefore he's just been able to focus on his race. Albeit he's no exception to the rule of the drivers had a spin here in these wet conditions, but he's definitely right now looking to be very happy behind the car, and well, understandably he'll be happy if he can keep Rob Windsor behind. But Windsor has got other ideas. Now, meanwhile, in the Evo class, with everything that's going on, we haven't really talked about the fact that there's been a lot of change in Evo, and at the very front of it is Jordan Jones. Now, Jones has found his way through primarily by not really making any mistakes, whereas everybody else has made mistakes. Jordan Jones, although exception is he did have an off-track 4 laps ago, albeit for a brief moment as I'm hearing in my ear, well, Jordan Jones right now has really just been absolutely fine. The only problem is, and I've just realised, he's yet to pit, so he is going to fall back into the order, given he's only 15 seconds ahead of Edward Berry. But if he was to pit and have a relatively short stop, that would move him into effectively 3rd, with Thomas Weston at 51 seconds back, and Weston has had a lot of work done to the car. He's had repair work done that's taken an extensive period of time. So Jones right now, he's not necessarily the Evo leader. It's going to be, after strategy plays out, Edward Berry. But I think that's going to give confidence to Jordan Jones in the fact that right now, even if he takes another podium here today, and it's only that, he's definitely starting to really match up to the championship leader. For Edward Berry then, well, he'll be thinking to himself right now that surely at some point Jordan's got to pit, and in doing so, he's always got to do it to survive and keep it on the black stuff here. Easier said than done, but for Edward Berry, this could be a very valuable win in this championship. In fact, it's been some time since we've seen him on the top step of the Evo podium, and his advantage has been absolutely whittled away. But this would enable him to reopen his advantage when you consider that Simon Hartley is all the way back in 5th place in Evo at the moment, and he is quite some way behind Thomas Weston by the best part of 12 seconds. So Hartley has in fact got more pressure from behind in the form of Alex Brown than he has with regards to the pressure in front of him that he's trying to enact. As he makes his way towards the end of this current lap, everywhere you look right now, there's question marks to be answered. And, well, we've also got some question marks right at the tip of the spear, which is, when is this man going to pit? Your overall leader and what is your pro leader, Krista Halzoy. He's got Samuel Clark, the Premier leader for Close Company. They have both yet to pit. And then they've got the elite leader who has pitted, Richard Simnor. He is effectively your racer leader at the moment, with all pit stops applied, presuming our 2 leaders are going to pit, and one of them does come into the pit lane, and that was Chris Halzoy and Samuel Clark with him. So they both in the end go as far as they can on the fuel tank, and it can't go any further, and this is going to be a dual pit stop times between the 2 teams, even though it's for overall position rather than what will be class of position, but understandably they both want to get ahead of each other. Simnor then goes on to lead this lap, and as he does so, he'll bring Raz Harper a bit further behind with him. In 2nd is the elite driver overrunning class, and Ricardo Luis Pereira, meanwhile, 3rd, but Premier leader, as Samuel Clark gets the jump there on Chris Halzoy in the pit lane. So he has a much shorter stop by the best part of 2.5 seconds, and for Samuel Clark, that enables him to move ahead, and it puts him within 15 seconds of Ricardo Luis Pereira. So Clark has got this right on strategy by going the longest of everybody in the Premier class. What he's been able to do, in fact, is just simply gain race time where everyone else has been losing it by not losing tyre temperature for a long period of time. The pace of the race has gradually descended, it should be pointed out, ladies and gents. We have lost the best part of 8 seconds a lap over the course of 45 minutes of racing. That's because of how the conditions have evolved and the fact that these wet tyres are wearing down very gradually. But right now, Samuel Clark definitely looking to be a bit of a speed demon out there, and Luis Pereira will be mindful of that, as Krista Halzoy has taken the lead back in the pro class as a result of the late pit stop. Nathan Anstis, who we thought might be closer, is 2.5 seconds behind. And Anstis is on a charge here, so it's not over yet. Off camera, Jordan Jones is into the pit lane from the lead of Evo. Edward Berry has immediately retaken the Evo lead, but where is Richard White? There's White, 2nd of the Evo drives, because Jordan Jones is just about to hit the pit limiter exit line. And as he does so, he'll fall in behind what is Ross Young and Stephen Donnelly. They both make the way down, and then there's Jones in the rear of the picture. And well, for Jordan Jones, that's definitely guaranteed 3rd place right now in the Evo class, as long as he keeps it together. And that is all your pit stops completed, bar one, I believe. And the one pit stop, unless I'm mistaken, it may be a glitch on our timing tower. Nathan Anstis right now, although I would say that Nathan perhaps has pitted based on the fact if he's going much deeper than this, that fuel tank is going to be spluttering very soon. There's some drama off camera. Mark Collicutt has had to tow to the pit lane quite recently. There's been a bit of an incident for him, and that has put him all the way down the order. But meanwhile, we've had an off-track. Oh, that's Raz Harper I was about to talk about. He's had an off-track, and he recovers there at 130R. So he's got around there, much like many a driver has before him. That drops him down to third place. Ricardo Rispera then moves up into second. The Premier leader continues to move forward. And thank you for confirming there, Budget Racing Noob, in the YouTube chat that Nathan Anstis has stopped. Indeed, it's just a glitch on our timing tower that you can't quite see with all the data. We suspected it had to be so, because otherwise Anstis right now, we would call him the Fuel Whisperer. But I do believe that the UK SimRacing driver here went so early that it's been missed by a pit calculator. And as he makes his way down, right now, he is getting closer and closer to Halsway, little by little. So this Pro League battle, it's still on the cards with 13 minutes on the final lap to go. Anstis has got to be careful as he uses all the entry curve there into turn number 2. He'll want to keep using as much width to the circuit, but is there too much there? Running on those red and white curbs, there's no grip on them, and therefore there's standing water that awaits a driver who dares to tip a toe onto them. Right now, Anstis is daring to do so because he wants to get close. Halsway is struggling meanwhile as he picks up the dirty F Samuel Clark in front, and Nathan Anstis really is all guns blazing here as they head over the rise. And at this point, he's going to be within 1 second by the time they get to Degda 1. He is, as that's a little bit of a wobble there from Chris Halsway as he does slide loose. And in towards Degda 1 and 2. Anstis is really pushing it hard, but pushes it way too hard for Degda 1. Takes 2 trips to the gravel, and that's the point we were wondering. Was he overdoing it? The answer is yes, he was. He'll learn from that very quickly. That gap to Halsway now reopens to 3.5 seconds. But the problem is, what does this do psychologically to the driver in the 296? Does it now make him think that the Suzuka circuit is going to bite back whenever he pushes, like he was only moments ago? Or does he just simply bite down hard and say, right, I've got it wrong there, just don't make the mistake again, keep on pushing otherwise? You've got to be in the latter if you want to win the race, but of course the former is where your mind immediately goes when you have a big mistake like that, because that could have been far, far worse, and it could have put him a long way down. The only saving grace he does have is the fact that he does have a gap to third place driver in Pro of Christian Maltrek of 22 seconds, which is a nice and comfortable gap for Anstis, and therefore he'll be thinking to himself he has got time to play with if he gets it wrong, but you don't want to get it wrong wherever possible. It sounds obvious on paper, but in the heat of the moment, it's not what you think about as a driver. All you're thinking about is, I want to win, I've got to push harder and harder. And the reality is, here in these wet conditions, you've got to drive smarter and smarter instead. He heads in towards Casio Triangle. Well, 11 minutes now await our drivers, and as they do, we look back to Thomas Weston. And the Ray-Ban machine, the Ferrari 296 right now, the privateer, continues to push on through Degda 1 in towards Degda 2. Flame spit out the rear of the number 98. But what a topsy-turvy race it has been for him, taking pole in Evo and 6th overall the qualifying grid. And then major incident moving him down the order, only then to regain the place he lost and retake the lead. And then another major incident sending him all the way backwards. And then already used the fast repair once, in the end having to spend the best part of 1.5 minutes in the pit lane to do more repair work to the car, and that really put him right towards the back. Still, he's given it everything. Jordan Jones is only the best part of 8 seconds up the road, so I think he fancies his chances, particularly when he's lapping at 3 seconds a lap faster than Jones on average at the moment. He will be there with about 4 minutes to spare, and he could be back on the podium, and Jones will know that and will be hoping that a little bit of traffic steps in between the two of them, but also he could just build up his pace a bit more, or that Weston makes an own mistake. Albeit, I would say that Weston right now will have dialed out those mistakes quite happily. Down the backstretch he comes. His next target is Luke Sherlock, a Premier driver who's in 6th in class, who's picked off Rob Windsor quite recently. And Luke Sherlock right now continuing to pick up places little by little. And it's definitely becoming a race right now where I think he's feeling quite happy with the car. And in fact, his most recent overtake has been on Joe Sparrow. It was, well, in fact, it was on James Conley, I do believe. And Conley has gone all the way down the order. But what exactly happened to James Conley is perhaps the better question. And to explain, we do have what happened to James Conley coming up on replay very shortly, ladies and gentlemen. And here we go for a quick replay of the misfortunes of James Conley. So we take a look to the replay then, and this is where it all went wrong for the UKSimRacing driver, who was already missing a rear wing. I don't know how that's happened, but no downforce in the rear end, coming out spoon curve. That's a recipe for disaster. And in the end, no downforce. The rear of the car lit up and just went around there. And as quickly as that, James Conley opted to tow to the pits. Back to your live race we come, and where it all went wrong for James Conley, and that explains how Luke Charlotte was able to take the place. And well, these drivers continue onwards here, and absolutely brave to do so, as Weston and Sherlock now getting very close together. Thomas Weston thinking about an opportunity. Can he find a way in? We will have to wait and see. Nathan Anstis as well, we believe, has had a bit of a moment whilst we were looking back at that, because, well, in fact, he's not had a bit of a moment. He's actually getting quite close to the back of Krista Halsoy. I will not repeat that. And he's still in pursuit mode. We're trying to keep an eye on that off camera, as meanwhile, Thomas Weston and Luke Sherlock dominate the proceedings that are on camera here. And out of the hairpin they come. No change at the moment, at least, as Weston is getting closer. He's not quite in attacking position at the moment as he takes a trip to the grass there. Carries a bit too much speed through 12. Rejoins. He has to really fight the car to rejoin. He'll lose out to Rob Winter. And that's another Premier driver now he'll need to unpick if he wants to chase after Jordan Jones. But it could have been far, far worse. But it wasn't in the end. And well done for Weston to get the car back on the road as safely as he did. We're back to Samuel Clark, who runs wide there, coming out turn of 7. That releases Krista Halsoy. So the second place Premier driver making a slight mistake. Halsoy is able to squeeze on through. And now Nathan Anstis, 3.2 seconds back, is on a mission to try and close up as much as he can. But his car snakes loose as well there through Degner 1. And, well, the McLaren drivers now, they look so fast in the mid-portion of the race. It seems, though, towards the end of the race, once again, that rear tyre wear that has definitely blighted them this season, the dry conditions, it may be coming back to haunt them even now in these wet conditions, as those rear tyres will have done a lot of the hard work, and for all the spinning up they've had to do, it wouldn't be surprising me there if the fact they haven't got as much rubber left as they would like to be able to continue to tackle and shift the water. Because do keep in mind, of course, with these wet tyres, they are treaded tyres effectively, like road tyres in a way. Slick tyres or dry tyres, they are slick literally because there is just rubber. There is no tread on it whatsoever, and that makes it a very grippy tyre. Take that in the wet. The problem with the slick tyre is it has no tread or no block on it to be able to push the water away from the tyre and essentially get grip on the tarmac surface that sits underneath. That's why we talk about wet tyres being treaded or having blocks on them. But as you wear the wet tyre down, you gradually wear away the blocks. In the end, what you are doing with a wet tyre is you are converting it into a metaphorical slick tyre once you've got no block left on it. And I wouldn't be surprised the rear tyres on those McLarens are now starting to head towards slick territory just because of how hard they're having to work. And that is why we are seeing likes of Nathan Anstis and Samuel Clark sliding loose, particularly in those traction zones in second and first gear, where they need all the traction, but the rear tyres are not giving it to them any longer. But from them, Edward Berry's had a bit of a moment only moments ago. He's got it back together, but the consequences are dire. Richard White now is only a second behind, but between the two of them is Stephen Donnelly. So Berry, he just needs to hold on for a little bit longer, but here comes Donnelly looking up the inside, but he's not going to be able to find it there into Spoon 1. Spoon 2 comes about, and Berry right now, where he just about holds on here, the Evo leader. But goodness me, his heart's going to be absolutely pounded in his chest. I can tell you right now, I've been there, ladies and gentlemen. Season 14, the Hockenheimring leading the cars, and 9 small mistakes can cost you big when the championship's on the line. And the UKSimRacing Hill driver right now, with Richard White closing. White in fourth place in the championship. He's not too close, but Berry needs this win. He needs to put a statement down to the rest of the class, which is you've got to try harder if you want this, and whoever wins this round, it's going to be the biggest bragging right of the season, even if they don't take the championship in the end. But into the pits comes Stephen Donnelly. They've underfueled the car, as we've also got to pits Richard White. White's in again as well. So this is a complete upset for the books. And as White makes his way on down, well, right now the Ferrari driver here just tiptoed his way along. But this is going to be a quick splash and dash. The save for Donnelly, but this is not the way they wanted it to go. Is Donnelly going to come into the pits? Well, come into his pit box, I should say. I don't think he is. I think he's just picked up enough instant points to pick up a drive-through penalty. So Donnelly, in the end, he will lose what will be 5th place in Pro to Darren Sharples through picking up a drive-through penalty, as meanwhile Richard White there having to serve was a secondary pit stop, a quick splash and dash just for the fuel that he's missing in the car. So the UKSimRacing team getting it wrong for the sister car there, as they got it right for Edward Berry, and that's going to be a bit frustrating there. And well, right now Thomas Weston 12 seconds behind will be thinking to himself that he can potentially hunt this down. Well, 4 minutes to go. I think he's going to need to strip the best part of 6 seconds a lap if he wants a chance. But never say never until... That's Thomas West in the gravel then, and coming back on for the runoff area, turn number 2. So I think that's going to put an end to the dream of chasing down third place at Western. But you can understand he's continued to push hard as much as he possibly can. We're back to looking at your overall standings for the remainder of the race distance. And right now, have we got any other battles out there? Well, Raz Harper's had a bit of a moment. He's dropped all the way down to 6th place. He's been passed by Samuel Clark and Nathan Anstis. And Nathan Anstis now going around the outside there of Samuel Clark, down towards turn number 1. Clark doesn't fight it, and well, the second place driver in the Premier class gives the place up to the second place pro driver. And for Anstis right now, his target is this man, Krista Halsoy. Halsoy right now only 4 seconds up the road, but he does seem to be the most composed of the pro drivers right now. And for Krista Halsoy, this is going to feel a very big result if he can just bring it home for a little bit longer. Remember, he has 1 win from this season. That was in round number 4 several weeks ago. Since then, it's been 2, 6 and a third. So right now for Krista Halsoy, sitting the best part of what is 68 points of a championship leader, Mikey Story. This is a round and a result that will put him right up there with Story down in 4th place, albeit it won't see him gain too much, but he'll gain enough to feel as though his championship charge can still be reignited, particularly with Mount Panorama awaiting us in a week's time and our season finale at Watkins Glen. But Halsoy's still got a couple more laps to get to that finish line. Indeed, they're all trying to hold on here as Luke Sherlock, that's an odd place to park. Is that a Degner too? I think it is. Car's parked up there. He's trying to get it turned around. The car's got around of some description for Luke Sherlock. And he taps the barrier there. The rear wing comes off. I think that rear wing looked absolutely fragile, to be fair. And as he finally gets it turned around, he reveals, no, he's at what is the XL130R. And the car's collapsed on the left-hand side. Luke Sherlock in a heavily wounded car. I don't think it's going anywhere. And with that, we take a look back at what's happened. So Luke Sherlock was making his way through. He was running 6th place at the time in Premier, lost it on the XL130R, and at that point the car aquaplaned into the barrier and the full left-hand side impact there. That's why the suspensions collapsed. That's why the rear wing suddenly fell off the car. I think the Pennzoil machine isn't going anywhere other than a tow to the pit lane, ladies and gentlemen, and that is absolutely gutting. He was on course for his season best performance, and in the end, it's all in the wall with only 3 minutes left. But coming back to your racing, there's the confirmation of Sherlock in the pit lane. So his race is all but over now. But meanwhile, it's not over yet for those out there. They've got 1 minute and 40 seconds left on the clock. Richard Simnor leader right now. He still comes to be ahead by 5.2 seconds. Behind him is Thomas Weston there. Just in case you're wondering who's in that Ferrari, it's not Joe Nathan's Rage Against the Game esports machine. That's the yellow car on the front, of course. But right now, Simnor is only this lap and perhaps one more, depending on how long he takes to the checker flag. And right now you can imagine he'll be thinking to himself and convincing himself over and over, you don't need to do anything silly at this point, just get it home, just get it to the finish line, and he will reopen his championship advantage to Joe Nathan, but he will reopen it considerably given Nathan's difficulties. But Weston right there behind him. Weston right now trying to stay nice and close, trying to observe as much as possible. And I think Simnor at this point might be thinking to himself, just focus on the road ahead of you. Don't think about the driver behind. It's very hard to do when you've been leading for so long in the race and you don't want to let it go. But that's why he's an elite driver. He definitely has the mindset of an elite driver. And the fact he gets on with the job week in, week out. Further down the order, Rob Windsor has just found his way past Jordan Jones down the back stretch before 130R. Jones has let that go because he knows he's on course for second place at Evo here, but he doesn't need to fight a Premier driver to prove that. With Richard White 17 seconds behind, it's a zero value battle. But from a zero value battle to right now, a valuable battle. This is Chris Halsoy. Nathan Anstis is right there with him as they make their way through turn number 12. Well, Anstis has caught up very quickly coming through the hairpin. Halsoy's going to hold on here just for what is another 4 corners. But Anstis is attacking non-stop. But we have to let them go, ladies and gentlemen, because meanwhile, making his way through the Casio Triangle chicane, here he comes then. And for Richard Simnor, it's only a brief interlude away from the top step of the podium. But in a survival of the wettest, it is Richard Simnor, who has held on to the very end of Suzuka to take the elite victory and overall for DCW Racing as he celebrates across the line. It will then be 7 seconds back to Ricardo Luis Pereira, who makes it back-to-back wins in Premier and announces himself on the Premier stage. Krista Halsoy, meanwhile, can he hold on as he winds his way through. I think he can. Nathan Anstis is there with him. He's baring his fangs. But right now, it's all bark and no bite for Anstis as Chris Dalside for Track 6 Racing delivers an absolute chomp to the championship standings and takes the win in the Pro class, third overall, ahead of Nathan Anstis, the runner-up in Pro. And then it will be Samuel Clark, runner-up in Premier, who finishes in 5th place just behind. Raz Harper will hold on into the end to a 2nd place in Elite Class, his best result of the season there in the DDK Racing Team Ford Mustang that we saw plenty of today. And then it will be Alan Lever who rounds off the Premier podium with 7th overall. A brilliant effort for him after going skyward at one moment onto 2 wheels in that car. It'll then be Sean Connor who takes 3rd in the Elite Class with season best performance in 8th overall, ahead of Christian Maltrek, 9th there, 3rd in the Pro class. Well done to him on a great recovery drive. Mikey Story in the end had to settle for 10th overall, 4th in the class. And then here comes Richard Jones to be 4th in what is Premier 11th overall, ahead of Darren Sharples as he comes down through the final corner. And, well, the 277 driver in a bit of a lonely end to his race. But in 13th, well, how about this, ladies and gentlemen? It has been a championship campaign that seemed to be falling off track. But for Edward Berry today, everybody lost their head at some point, but for Edward Berry, he kept his cool, he kept his composure. He's back to Evo winning ways as the UKSimRacing Hill driver, and well done to him for 13th overall. He will be ahead of Ross Young, who comes on through with another McLaren here to take 14th or 5th in Premier. And then we will see the overall top 15 completed with another podium in Evo for Jordan Jones. Give him a round of applause for Dartwin Racing with SimCoach setups. 15th overall, 2nd in Evo. He's absolutely ecstatic about that. And Stephen Donnelly will be behind in 16th place there in the Haribo machine for JSD Motorsports. And then we've got Richard White, who has just passed Rob Windsor on the run to the checker flag to take 3rd place in the Evo class there. Well done to Richard on that one. And in the end, Rob Windsor is struggling to align here. I think he's had it off track and he's just trying to limp along. Can he get to the finish? The answer is yes, he will. The car's heavily damaged, but he's going to crawl to the finish, ladies and gentlemen. And right now, we're all thinking of giving him a little push along as he makes his way down. Come on, Rob, you can do it. It's only about 10 more meters and he's almost there. The lines are right there in front of him and he does just finish the race on the lead lap in 18th place, 6th in the class. And goodness me, the Premier driver there having a nightmare end to his race. But definitely a race full of nightmares and dreams for many a driver. Some shattered dreams perhaps here. But for Richard Simnor, the dream of an elite championship crown very much still on course. As for Edward Berry, well, last time out at Interlagos, it was a battle to be on the podium. Here today, in the early stages, it was a fight for the lead, but after taking it, whereas everybody else seemed to be making the mistakes, even Edward Berry to an extent, he made the least of them and minimal mistakes by comparison, and that is why he is your Evo winner here today. But as the rain continues to fall and then go away, indeed it's been a very wet and soggy Suzuka circuit here today, and that has really brought out the very best in our drivers. And as we look to the scenic view, let's take a look at those race results subject to Eddie Stewart's inquiries, and here they are. So after a brilliant 60 minutes of racing in round number 8 of season 16 of the UKSimRacing GT3 Championship, brought to you on iRacing and hosted by SimRacing International, Richard Simnor took overall victory for DCW Racing by 7.3 seconds over SRI Privateers of the Caribbean's Ricardo Luis Pereira. Second place then for the Premier driver. And the Aston Martin driver there will be gutted not to have taken the overall win, given he put it on overall pole. But to be fair, to take a overall podium is an achievement in itself. And to make it now back-to-back wins in the Premier class by a quite dominant margin, that is saying something as well. Krista Halsoy there rounds off your overall podium with 3rd place, but more importantly, the Pro win. As we do see his brother there, of Didrik Halsoy, saying, "Let's go, bro," a goated 3rd place. Indeed, great to hear there from Didrik, tuned it in, cheering on his brother, and Halsoy will be absolutely pleased with that with the Track 6 racing driver, and knowing that he's put himself right in the hunt for the title of the Pro class. Nathan Anstis as well, 2nd place there for UKSimRacing Mansell, could not find the final half a second he needed to make the move stick, but still 2nd place in the class and 4th overall. He'll know that he's definitely on the forward march. Samuel Clark, run-up in Premier, took 5th there for Dexterous Motorsports, head of Raz Harper for DDK Racing Team, who was your run-up in the Elite class. And then we did have none other than Alan Lever completing the Premier podium in 7th place there for UKSimRacing Mansell, which was a race all about, not about how he started, but how he survived it all and how he finished it. And behind the Lamborghini driver was Connor Bros, Sean Connor, who unfortunately, with several off-tracks, had to settle for third place in elite and 8th overall, but he was ahead of Christian Maltret for America MA70 Esports and Mikey Story for Dexterous Motorsports, who completed your top 10. Richard Jones was 11th there, best of the rest for Slow and Steady Racing, ahead of Darren Sharples, with the old dudes in cars driver there at one point on course to potentially lead and win in the pro class, but that all came undone after a major off-track. Edward Berry was your Evo winner there in 13th place for UKSimRacing Hill, ahead of Ross Young by the best part of 12 seconds, with the priority then given way to Jordan Jones, your run-up in the Evo class, 15th on the road there overall for DWR with Supercoach setups. Stephen Donnelly was 16th for JST Motorsports, ahead of Richard White, who was the last of your class podium finishers there. In the Evo class, he was third of the class for UKSimRacing Mansell, and then your final lead lap finisher was Rob Windsor for UKSimRacing Hill, a further 27 seconds behind in 18th place. It was a lap down for Thomas Weston, as it was for Daniel Payes, who completed your top 20, and the theme of a lap down for many a driver continued, there with Alex Brown, Joe Sparrow, and all the way through to Luke Sherlock in 27th place, all a lap down, and behind the privateer, it was non-finishers as classified for several drivers, including James Connolly, Mark Collicott, Jack Barker, and also there we did see Joe Nathan, Matt Hoyland, Robin Pownier, Hendrik Zilker, Wayne Douglas and Ashley Coupland. All of them coming to misery and woe at some point over the race distance. But now coming on to the individual class finishing positions and starting with your elites, as always, Richard Simnor then, your winner here, and returning to winning ways immediately after that second place at Interlagos. Meanwhile, Joe Nathan at 5th there, but a non-finisher. It means that Simnor takes a maximal score here, and the DCW Racing driver will feel as though this pitches the momentum firmly back into his court. Whereas Harper, a season best performance there for DDK Racing Team. He was challenging for the win early on, but early mistakes cost him dear, as they did for Sean Cotter, while the Cotter Bros driver there a further 7 seconds adrift. Yavi Sierra held on to 4th place, the privateer a lap down. And then we did have the non-finishes for Joe Nathan for Rage Against the Game Esports, and also Relentless Racing's Ashley Coupland, who retired after that instant turns 1 and 2. Then coming into the pro class, and here we see and say a big congratulations to Krista Halsoy for Tractics Racing, who in the end threw everything at this one and got it right, even with Nathan Anstis right behind him all the way to the finish line. The UKSimRacing Mansell driver was only 6 tenths behind at the finish, but he was comfortably 29.5 seconds ahead of Miracar MA70 Esports' Christian Maltrek. That was your podium, and then we had Dexterous Motorsports' Mikey Story, 3 seconds behind. He'll be a bit gutted not to finish on the podium, and know that will slightly dent his championship lead, but he will still hold about 50 points of an advantage, and therefore the onus is still on his rivals to play catch up. Darren Sharples took 5th there for Old Dudes in Cars Blue, ahead of Stephen Donnelly, the JST Motorsports driver having a drive-through penalty that spoiled his opportunity to finish 5th. It was then non-finishes as classified for Mark Collicott for DCW Racing, as it was for Made for Racing Jack Barker, and also Matt Hoyland there for Dexterous Motorsports after his absolute cataclysmic pit entry, and I think it was an unintended one in the end, but he had to improvise. Then coming to the Premier class, and here we can see it was Ricardo Luis Pereira for SRI Privateers of the Caribbean, really the driver of the day, many would say, with that overall pole position, class pole position, and in the end, converting it all into a Premier win. 2 on the bounce now. If he continues like this, he's definitely suddenly going to become one of the championship title favourites. There's only one problem with that. The championship leader, Samuel Clark, well done to him for Dexterous Motorsports, finished runner-up there, 24 seconds behind. And Clark right now, he doesn't need to win the championship. All he's got to do is finish comfortably on the podium. He's doing that very well. Alan Lever took third there for UKSimRacing Mansell, a further 18 seconds behind. And then we did have Richard Jones in 4th there for Slow and Steady Racing, with a bit of a frustrating race to the close. But still, he was ahead of Ross Young, who completed your top 5. The privateer ahead of Rob Windsor, who was your last lead lap finisher for UKSimRacing Hill. There was a lap down for Daniel Payes, Joe Sparrow and Shane Connor, and also there for Luke Sherlock, who at one point was chasing down 6th until a late mistake cost him dear. You've got to feel for him. And then we did have 7 laps down, non-classified as a finisher. James Connolly ahead of non-finishes for Robin Pownier, and also for Hendrik Zilker and Wayne Douglas. Then coming to the Evo class, last but by no means least, and here we got to see in the end what was Edward Berry take the Evo win by 17.5 seconds for UKSimRacing Hill over DWR Sim Coach Setups Jordan Jones, but with a further 18 seconds to Richard White for UKSimRacing Mansell, and it really was a race today about just keeping it on the tarmac, and Edward Berry did that best. Thomas Weston took 4th place there after spinning from the lead twice in the race. The privateer still kept his head in it to win it, but had to settle for 4th and a lap down. And behind the privateer was Slow and Steady Racing's Alex Brown, who brought home a season best performance. Simon Hartley took 6th there for DWR with SimCoach setups, and it was Joel Loudon who rounded off the Evo field for SI with Saving Privateer Ryan. So that concludes our rundown of the provisional race results, ladies and gentlemen, and it concludes our time here at Suzuka. And what a time we have had. It has been full of drama, it has been full of standing water on the circuit, and well, whether we see rain or more for the remainder of the season, that's to be considered, but we can definitely walk away from here thinking that it has been a day today where it's all about keeping it nice and safe, and Richard Simnor demonstrated that best. But with that, it's time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and perhaps you're sat there right now wanting to know how you can be on the grid in a future season or an ongoing season of racing at SimRacing International, well, all you need to do is join the official Discord, invite link at the bottom of your screen. And if you do so, you could be on the grid in any of our ongoing series perhaps, including of course what you've tuned into today, which is the UKSimRacing Community Sunday GT3 Championship. That's every Sunday evening. Alternatively, if you're a GT3 fan but more of a weekday racer, we do have the Trophy.ai sponsored GT3 Championship that runs on Thursday evenings, currently coming towards the close of its 10th season, and sign-ups for Season 11 are already open, as they are for Season 17 of the UKSimRacing Community's GT3 Championship. Alternatively, if you're looking for GT3 action on Sundays, but perhaps with a multi-class element, we do have our America's GT Challenge, which is a bit of an unconventional one in the fact we intermingle GT3s and the cars they have replaced in real-world racing, GTEs. And you would think that's a recipe for mayhem. Far from it. It's been a recipe for absolutely brilliant racing, and we can promise you that every 2 weeks on Sunday evenings, it really is one of the biggest events of the calendar. But if you're not looking to be on the grid for anything serious, perhaps you're more looking to further yourself and indeed improve, practice makes perfect, they say, and we have our free-to-join Practice League, which does run on Tuesday evenings and Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. And also, of course, we don't have it advertised here, but we have recently opened up sign-ups for our all-new GTE Championship, which is due to get underway at the start of 2026, and we'll be seeing practice sessions open up for that as well. So there's never been a better time to be on the grid at SimRacing International, and all you've got to do to be part of it is join the official Discord. We'd also like to take a quick moment to say a big thank you to our league and series sponsors, who do include, of course, Trophy.ai, Carme, More Than Technology, SimCoach, where you unlock your true potential as a sim racing driver, the GP2 Group, and last but by no means least, Motorsport UK's esports division, and a huge thank you to them for their ongoing recognition of us here at SimRacing International as a recommended community, and we long hope that can continue in towards 2026. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, the story of the season will continue with round number 9 in a week's time, seeing our drivers head down under to the Mount Panorama Motor Racing Circuit, more commonly known as Bathurst. It'll be a game of who is the king of the mountain, and with our championships continuing to sway back and forth across all 4 classes and also the teams, well, the king of the mountain may just find themselves on top of their championship charge right before our season finale at Watkins Glen International. The racing will occur on Sunday, the 23rd of November 2025, but we invite you to come join us if it were live on Wednesday, the 26th of November, as we see how the story winds into its penultimate round. But until then, we have been SimRacing International. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, also known as TX11 or Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, like our drivers, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay on track. Good night.